Hello and welcome to the Driver of the Weekend video for the Hungarian Grand Prix. If you notice anything different about the video surroundings, I am trialling a brand new webcam that I've just purchased rather than using my phone. So I now finally have my phone free, if I ever want to use it, which I probably won't. Also, this race, Hungary, very hectic and has played havoc with pretty much all of my data analysis and especially the Driver of the Weekend algorithm. So I'm going to display everything. I don't agree with it personally, what it's outputted, but I'll leave it up to you guys whether you want me to actually include this race in all of the standings or whether I should exclude it. But we are going to go through the Driver of the Weekend for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, if you'd like a full explanation of exactly how this algorithm works, I'll pop a link to a playlist in a card in the corner. So without further ado, let us take a quick look at the practice driver of the day. Now, this doesn't really equate to too much. It only equates to 2% of the overall driver of the weekend, but it's just interesting to see who had a decent practice and who had a not so decent practice. In this instance, it was Perez, Tsunoda and Mazepin who struggled, and Gasly, Verstappen and Raikkonen who did very well. Then from the practice driver of the day, we will take a look at the qualifying driver of the day, which has declared Lewis Hamilton to have the strongest qualifying session of the entire field. We then interestingly have Carlos Sainz above Charles Leclerc. Now I have triple 100% and quadruple checked all of the numbers and the stats and everything like this, and the reason why Carlos Sainz comes out above Charles Leclerc, even though he crashed in Q2, is because of the performance in Q1. The DNF I haven't actually equated for just yet, mainly because there haven't been too many instances other than Yuki Tsunoda where drivers have crashed in qualifying. So that is a scenario that I have not yet coded for, so I will now code for one of those scenarios. It is from the qualifying driver of the day when we take a look at the race driver of the day where things start to fall apart just a little bit. Now, honestly, the top couple of drivers I'm fairly happy with. Esteban Ocon declared the race driver of the day. From Nicholas Latifi, potentially he's a little bit too high. Then Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, George Russell, Kimi Raikkonen, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Giovinazzi, Schumacher. And then here is where it starts to get a little bit iffy. So I set out parameters before I started this series that I didn't really want to deal with DNFs in this data algorithm. I obviously am going to take it into account for my own opinion ranks, which we will compare to your audience ranks as well in just a little moment's time. But for the data analysis side, I didn't really want to get involved too much with the actual DNFs. So I just decided that regardless of the DNF, if you were an innocent party and it was a mechanical fault, it was a crash and it was not your fault, you would receive 10 out of 20, a straight middle ground. If you were declared at fault for an incident, you were given 5 for that overall category. As simple as that. And if we take a look back at the overall rankings, Verstappen and Hamilton were scored extremely low. Now there is a category in this about where the car should be performing. And obviously they both were performing extremely poorly compared to where the car should be, which is why they are ranked so low. If I was to exclude that category, pretty much this would rejig to roughly how I would expect it, with Verstappen and Hamilton pushed further up into the top 50%. However, excluding that category, the likes of Ocon and Alonso start to fall down. So it is a massive trade-off, and I am leaving it up to you guys whether we include the overall driver of the weekend, which, if we take 2% of the practice scores, 28% of qualifying and 70% of the race, we end up with this order here. The 2 Alpines at the top, Esteban Ocon followed by Alonso, then the 2 Williams, then Gasly, Sainz, Vettel, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Norris, Verstappen, Mazepin, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Perez, Tsunoda, Leclerc, Bottas, Stroll. I personally completely disagree with this order, which is why I'm leaving it up to you guys whether you would like to include it. Hectic Grand Prix like the Hungarian Grand Prix that we've just had completely throws this off kilter, off the rails, any kind of expression like that you want to use. And it is mainly because I have not coded for every single possibility because I don't know what every single possibility is going to be. How could I code for something that I don't know is going to be there? It's races like this that enhances my algorithms and things like that, because I do add the extra little legs and stuff like that. But what we can do now is we can compare this order in a table format for you to my overall opinion ranks that I made on the video on Sunday. And those coming in just to the right look a little bit like this. Both myself and the data algorithm has put Esteban Ocon at the top with Fernando Alonso in second. I have also made some adjustments to my scores. I've bumped Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Nicholas Latifi, Mick Schumacher, Max Verstappen all up 1 point, as well as I believe it was the 2 Alfa Romeos I bumped up a couple of points, and then I haven't actually bumped anybody down. Usually I bump people down. Now, if you notice the couple of zeros for Perez, Leclerc, Norris and Mazepin, I did not give them any ranks, so they are not going to score any points for this race. For my section, anyway. For your guys' audience average ranks, they look a little bit like this. The average audience rank put Nicholas Latifi as the driver of the weekend, then Esteban Ocon, then Fernando Alonso, then Lewis Hamilton, joint with Sebastian Vettel, closely followed by George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, etc, etc, etc. Now, I was saying in the Grand Prix just 2 weeks ago that there were very little comparisons that we could draw between the three lists. There is even less comparisons that we can draw between the three lists on screen currently. Now, not to say that any one list is remotely correct, as they are all completely worked out differently, different people's opinions, etc, etc. A list is a list. It can be argued either way. There is no correct list. However, it just so happens that this time I do completely disagree with my own data algorithms list for the problems that I have listed previously. But what we can do now is adding on the Hungarian Grand Prix scores, but don't worry, I can remove them depending on what the audience opinion is, to the total scores that we've had this season. We end up with an overall order for the data-derived ranks that looks a little bit like this. Max Verstappen is declared the driver of the season from Lando Norris, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, all the way down to the struggling drivers of Bottas, Ricciardo, Perez and Tsunoda. With my totaled ranks looking a bit like this: Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Leclerc, Ricciardo, with the struggling drivers being Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Latifi, Stroll and Mazepin, and your summated audience ranks looking a little bit like this: Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Sainz, Bottas in P5. You guys think Bottas is having an extremely good season, with your struggling drivers being Giovinazzi, Latifi, Tsunoda, Raikkonen and also Mazepin. Now, it is going to be completely up to you guys, the audience, whether you would like me to include these Hungarian Grand Prix scores in the season's lists, as I personally completely disagree with what my data algorithm has outputted, mainly because I know that the code is faulty and it doesn't really work for the hectic Grand Prix of Hungary. So I'm kind of glad that I do have 4 weeks at the moment to basically play with it and to fix it and to add all of these extra add-ons for races such as this. But please let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the data algorithm output and also the comparisons between my opinions that I made on Sunday and then your average audience ranks as well. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.